5 seconds. That's the when I went home yesterday. Please. All right. You ready, Mommy?
Ready.
And your name's Charlotte.
No.
Oh my God.
It's
Rachel?
Cassie. No, it's up there.
Cassie.
Yeah, well, okay. My name is Cassi McDowell, if you don't know already. And I'm going to talk to you about The Sims and SimCity and its inventor, Will Wright. So I don't know if all of you have ever played the games before, so I'm just going to start, and I want to show you a video really fast of what the Sims 2 graphics are like, so that way you know what I'm talking about. So.
Rated T for teen.
Okay, so that was for The Sims 2 that came out. Sims 3 just came out, but they don't have expansion packs or anything yet. But Will Wright invented Sims. He also just invented the game Spore. It came out, I think, in June. It's a little bit different than Sims, but around the same concept. The thing that Will Wright does is he designs video games that allow you to create worlds and create different things that you can destroy, you can rule them, you can do all these amazing things with them, but the thing about his games is that they're very open-ended. And instead of creating games that have violence and strategies in order to win, he creates games that they allow you to just be open-ended and create a narrative and rewrite the formula of success in that video game industry. I don't know if you've ever played like Roller Coaster Tycoon or something like that. That's like another kind of open-ended game that was a little bit inspired by SimCity and The Sims. The Sims was released, the first one was released in the year 2000, and in just 2 years it became one of the best-selling video games of all time. As you saw in that video in Sims 2, I think they sold over 100 million copies of Sims 2, and there were a ton of different expansion packs for that one. The original Sims, I think, had 6 expansion packs, and they sold over 8 million copies. I'm sure there's more now that it's growing bigger and bigger. Before Will Wright got onto the scene of video games, a lot of video games, and they still are today, have a lot to do with strategies. You have to do certain tasks to complete the video game, and then you win the game. And then it's over and you buy the next game. But Will was interested in different kinds of things like urban dynamics. He was interested in city planning, and he wanted to create games that he can merge that interest and be able to play and enjoy it. So Will Wright kind of started from humble beginnings, like a lot of inventors. He dropped out of college. He didn't really know what he was doing with his life. He started with a few different kinds of video games. They were moderately successful, but it wasn't really like a blockbuster until he started thinking of SimCity. And that came out in the early 90s, and it was just a very simple game. He could create different districts in a city. He could kind of manage the houses and the households and the people there. And it did so well that he and his friend Jeff could start their own company called Maxis. And under Maxis, he created tons of different simulation games. One of the really interesting ones is Sim Ant. And I've never played it. I don't know how popular it was, but it was inspired by an ant colony. And I guess you could just create a colony and make sure that it thrived or something. I don't know what you'd do with it. But there were tons of different ones under the simulation game. They weren't really huge successes until he started something called Dollhouse. And he was inspired by the idea of Dollhouse whenever his apartment complex completely burnt down. And he was just married at the time, and he had to buy all new things. He had to buy a new apartment, and he thought to himself, well, what if I created a video game where all you did was just design a house and buy a lot of stuff? And you had to make the little people, the Sims, he called them at the time, happy by just buying them all this stuff and making them a house that they liked. So he developed it, he brought it into testing, he tested it with a ton of different demographics, but as soon as he got to the 12-year-old boy demographic, they didn't want to play it at all. They wanted nothing to do with a game called Dollhouse. The only thing they said to Will was, well, can we kill the Sims in the game? And he was like, what? So he had to go back to the drawing board for that, and he created something called Sims. And in this is just a simulation of life. What you do is you create people, they're called Sims, and you make them do everything that you would normally do. In the first Sims, it's really basic. They get up in the morning, they go to work, they make meals, they can make friends, they advance at their job, they can get fired, they can do different hobbies, just anything that you would normally do. Like I said before, it's really narrative driven. You can make your creations, give them whatever personalities you want, make them do whatever you want them to do. And like here, they can be unemployed, they can be adulterous, they can be parents, you can do anything you want with them. Will talks a lot about what he wanted for the game, even though you can do whatever you want in the game. There's a quote here talking about how he presents everything at a certain level of abstraction so that anybody could just come into the story and just do what you wanted through their interpretation. So one of his examples was, it's like the panels of a comic book, and here there's 2 panels up here. And the first one, there's like a villain telling a guy that now he's going to die, and he's shouting. And then in the next panel, there's like a scream. And Will was talking about that The Sims is about what happens in the gutter of 2 comic book panels. And the gutter is that space in between. So what you can assume is happening is that the villain gets the man and he's the one that's screaming, or maybe the man turns around and attacks the villain and that's who is screaming, or maybe someone came in, I don't know, from the hallway or something, heard what was happening and screamed when they saw what was happening. So basically what The Sims does is it gives you 2 panels and then you work with what's in the gutter, and you can make whatever happened on The Sims what you want to happen. So there were a few different controversies that happened because of the game. I mean, it's very popular. It was released in 14 different languages, so it had to conform to a lot of different societies and a lot of different norms in those societies. So he had to deal with stuff like sex, violence, abuse, either child abuse or spousal abuse. If he wanted to make it very realistic, he had to talk about these things. So in the next one, this will kind of clarify things a little bit more. These are just screen caps from different games. I wish I had the game on my computer to show you how to do it, but I don't have the time. But the first one with that like dust cloud is from Sims 2, and that's kind of what happens when Sims get into a fight with each other. Like a dust cloud like comes out of nowhere, and you just see them like fighting. And so Sims have the option to fight with each other, a man or a woman, but not like an adult and child. Like Sims can't do that. Okay, the one underneath it is from the original Sims. It's like, well, I don't know what that man is, but those 2 are like, well, if you wanted your Sims to have like children in the game, they would have to get that like specific bed, and then what would happen is they would just be rolling around under the covers in the bed. So you didn't like really see anything, but it was happening, and it's rated T for teen, so it's not like for kids, like it's just what happens. And then this one is I actually did this with my Sims. I don't know if you guys ever did this, but there's a ton of different ways you can make your Sims die on the game. And the way this person did it is that they like built a room around their Sim and put a fireplace in it. And that way, if the fireplace burns long enough, like it will just catch everything on fire. So like there's a Sim like in those flames, because that black thing is death. The Grim Reaper is coming after him. And then there's all these other Sims watching, and they all have thought bubbles about a door, because they're all wondering why isn't there a door so that guy can get out of that burning room. So like in the first Sims, actually Sims can't die of old age. Now they can, but if you wanted to kill off a Sim, you would come up with things like that to do. People obviously have been talking about these controversies, and they talk about how Sims mimics reality and everything. And Will Wright has an opinion on it. He says that it's a double standard because people focus on certain aspects of the game, like same-sex relationships or violence. In about 60% of the games out there, the point is that you kill. So when you kill other people in those games, you rarely hear moral discussions about that. And I didn't mention before, but the same-sex relationships in The Sims, like your Sim isn't gay or straight. You can just make your Sim fall in love with whatever other adult you want them to fall in love with. So people sometimes find that a controversy. So the cultural impact of The Sims has extended pretty far. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read any books by Chuck Klosterman, but he had a book called Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, A Low Culture Manifesto. And in it, that first came out whenever the original Sims came out. And he played the game and he wrote about it. He drew a bunch of conclusions. And he got to have a conversation with Will Wright about the game and about what he thought the game was. And he wrote in the book, if there's any core question with The Sims, it's got to be, what is the purpose of life? Is it to be loved? Is it to be rich? Is it to be successful? They're the same questions you could ask if you never knew the game existed. And later in that conversation, Will says, if the game changes your perception of the world around you, it's successful. So actually, that's the end. So thank you.